Hello everyone, my name is Mandeep Singh and today I will be presenting on a very pressing issue that affects many of us, the dual challenge of housing affordability and rising inflation. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Housing affordability and rising inflation are two significant economic challenges that are increasingly becoming intertwined. In this presentation, I will explore the relationship between these two issues, analyzing the contributing factors, and discuss the implications for individuals and policymakers. So let's dive in. The connected issue of housing affordability and rising inflation are big challenges in Canada. Housing affordability means being able to pay for housing without spending more than 30% of your income. Rising inflation means the prices of goods and services keep going up, which reduces what your money can buy and makes housing and other essentials even more expensive. These issues affect people's financial stability, the economy, and social fairness. In this literature review, I look at these challenges by combining information from articles, economic reports, government documents, and reputable news sources. By looking at different viewpoints, this study aims to understand how these important issues interact with each other. Now I will give a little background about housing affordability and rising inflation. Housing affordability and rising inflation are major economic challenges in Canada. Housing affordability means being able to secure housing without spending more than 30% of your income on it. Many Canadians struggle with this because home prices and rents have been increasing much faster than wages, particularly in larger cities. This makes it harder for people to maintain a good quality life and increases economic inequalities. Moving towards the rising inflation. Rising inflation adds another layer of difficulty. Inflation means the prices of goods and services go up over time, which reduces what people can buy with their money. Recent data shows that inflation rates have reached around 8.1%, putting extra pressure on the household budgets. This causes people to spend more on essentials and leaving them with less money for other needs. Together, these issues have a big impact. High housing cost and inflation increases financial stress and makes it harder for households to stay financially stable. This can lead to higher debt levels, and a greater need for social support, which can hurt overall economic growth. It's crucial to develop effective policies to make housing more affordable and manage inflation to support economic stability. Now for viewpoints. First, we have the viewpoint that focuses on economic factors like inflation and interest rate. According to this perspective, these factors play a crucial role in determining housing affordability. Inflation leads to general increase in the price level of goods and services, which directly impacts the cost of housing. When inflation rate rise, it means that the cost of housing, whether for buyer or renting, also goes up. Recent inflation rates have soared to about 8.1%, putting significant pressure on households. Interest rates are another important aspect. When inflation is high, central banks often increase interest rate to control it. However, higher interest rates make borrowing costs more expensive. This situation can further drive up housing prices because higher borrowing costs reduce the affordability of mortgages. This cycle creates a challenge for individuals trying to buy a home or secure rental properties. The consensus among economists is that effective monetary and fiscal policies are necessary to manage inflation and support housing affordability. By stabilizing inflation and ensuring that interest rates are balanced, policymakers can help maintain reasonable housing costs and support economic stability. Another key viewpoint involves the role of government policies and interventions in addressing these issues. Advocates of this perspective argues that targeted policy measures are essential for improving housing affordability. For example, increasing the housing supply through tax incentives for developers, regulatory reforms, and strategic investments in affordable housing are proposed solutions. These measures aim to tackle both the immediate challenges of housing affordability and the long-term sustainability of the housing market. Supporters of this viewpoint believe that without government interventions, market inefficiencies will persist, will persist and go even, and the crisis will go even further. They emphasize the need for policy reforms to address the imbalance between housing supply and demand, which is worsened by rising inflation. For instance, increasing construction capacity and adopting innovative building methods are seen as crucial steps in making housing more accessible and affordable. The third viewpoint centers on the social impacts and equity considerations related to housing affordability and inflation. This perspective highlights that housing affordability issue disproportionately affects marginalized and low-income population. It argues that housing should be regarded as a fundamental human right, which necessitates policies focused on social equity and inclusivity. From this viewpoint, it's important to consider social dimensions such as the need for social housing initiatives, rent control measures, and policies aimed at preventing homelessness and displacement. The goal here is to address systematic inequalities that are exacerbated by housing affordability challenges. By investing in these social programs, policymakers can mitigate adverse social impacts and ensure a more equitable distribution of housing resources. This perspective underscores the importance of not only addressing economic inefficiencies but also considering the social and ethical dimensions of housing access. Integrating these viewpoints help us understand the complex nature of the issue. While economic factors and policy intervention focus on market dynamics and immediate affordability, the social impacts perspective insists on addressing broader societal and ethical concerns. Balancing economic efficiencies with social is essential for creating sustainable and fair housing solutions. Now I will talk a bit about language and sources I used for my presentation and my literature review report. The first was Robert Hughes. Um, in Robert Hughes' article, Housing Shortage in Canada, RBC Insight, the language is formal and the target towards a professional audience. With terms like policy reforms, housing supply, and government intervention, this formal tone reflects the serious nature of the housing crisis and the need for well-informed policy responses. Preliminary observations suggest that the article language is structured to appeal to policymakers and stakeholders by focusing on evidence-based recommendations. The use of precise terminology and a logical flow of arguments highlights the urgency of implementing effective solutions to addressing the housing shortage. The theoretical approach is centered on policy analysis, aiming to drive action through particular solution and detailed analysis, thus avoiding emotional appeals and focusing on the technical aspect of the issue. My second source, Udayrana. In Udayrana's article are mom and pop investor pricing out first-time home buyer. The language is both accessible and emotive, using terms like mom and pop investors, pricing out, and wealthy inequality. This choice of words is designed to make complex market dynamics more relatable and to evoke a strong emotional response from readers. Preliminary observations indicate that the article uses emotive language to highlight the adverse impact of investor activity on first-time home buyers, aiming to engage readers on an emotional level. The theoretical approach combines quantitative data with expert opinion to underscore the seriousness of the issue. By appealing to the fairness and economic impact, Rana's analysis effective argues for a revaluation of current market conditions and the need for intervention to address the imbalance created by investor activities. And my third source, Jan Bersello. In Jan Bersello's article, Is Canadian Inflation Worse Than Reported? The language is narrative driven and emotive, focusing on the perceived disconnect between official inflation statistics and the personal experiences of Canadian consumers. Bersello contrasts the reported CPI rate of 2.9% with personal anecdotes that depict significant price rise in essential goods like groceries, housing, and municipal taxes. This approach makes the economic issue more relatable and engages readers by reflecting their own frustration. This article uses a mix of empirical evidence and expert testimony to support its argument. Although official statistics present a relatively low CPI rate, Barcelos highlights how substantial prices increases in specific area might not be fully captured by the CPI. This emphasizes the limitation of relying solely on statistical measures gauging the true impact of inflation. Expert opinions from economists like Matthew and Bill Robson further bolster the article's analysis. And as he points out, the CPI's shortcoming in reflecting individuals' experience, while Robson discusses how psychological factor and personal perceptions influences perceived inflation effects. The article's use of emotional appeal and analogies effectively bridges the gap between statistical measures and real-world experience, providing a vivid portrayal of inflationary pressures. And now just moving toward the conclusion. In conclusion, this analysis has eliminated the profound impact of housing affordability and rising inflation on both individuals and the broader economy. We begin by highlighting the critical nature of these economic challenges, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of their effects and interconnections. Our discussion revealed that the disparities between income growth and rising housing costs remains a significant issue. Despite various policy efforts, the gap continues to strain affordability for many individuals. Emphasizing the need for more innovative and comprehensive approaches, inflation has emerged as a major force exacerbating this problem by reducing real income and increasing costs across the board, including those related to housing. Inflation intensifies the affordability crisis and impacts overall economic stability. The synthesis of these two issues demonstrate a complex cycle relationship. Rising inflation drives up housing cost and erodes purchasing power, while housing cost contributes to broader economic stress. To address these intertwined challenges, a multi-phased approach is required. Policymakers need to implement economic reforms, enhance housing initiatives, and manage inflation effectively. While no single solution is definitive, coordinated efforts are crucial to ensuring both housing affordability and economic stability. Thank you for your attention as we continue to navigate these complex economic challenges. I encourage you to consider the multifaceted solution discussed today and think about how coordinated efforts can help us achieve a more balanced and stable economic future. I'm open to any questions or discussion you may have. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation.